Water. It's what we drink. Despite how easy it is to get water nowadays, so much so that we have amusement parks around abusing the stuff, water used to be the difference between life and death. Without water, civilizations wouldn't exist. Not sure what I mean? Well, let's talk about it. Now, anyone can dig a hole in the ground and declare it their home. Maybe that's how your village started out. It's figuring out if you can actually survive there for years that keep people in the area. Since ancient times, hamlets and villages almost always appeared near water, trees, natural defenses, and fertile land. Optimal living spaces make for an easier time for the inhabitants. As a result, more people settle in, and thus skills start to develop. A small village may grow into a town, and one day a bustling city. But before all of that, the basic truth is that humans need water to survive. You can get rid of almost any one of these, and it would still be possible to make a village. Except for water. After all, rivers, streams, ponds all provide water, which lead to crops, which also lead to animals. If there's no water, then there should be no food. So, if there is a settlement with crops, but no water, isn't that kind of weird? How are they functioning? Don't they need water? It's a small detail that can poke a hole in the world you're trying to make. After all, when you make a world, it's usually under the assumption that it's an Earth-like place. You know, water that's comprised of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, fruits and vegetables that originate from Earth, languages that are recognizable to the human ear. These are usual breaks in reality that we accept readily without much thought, although that's a separate video entirely. But when you have humans, or totally not humans that are just similar in every way possible, it's expected that they follow the same rules as humans in the real world do. So, if they are to grow, they need to have the sustainable resources to achieve growth. And most of the basic parts of growth require water. Yet despite this, it is a rather understated fact. You don't see a lot of books or movies spending a minute or two describing how life started from the river nearby. The river in question is usually just right there. In many works of fiction, the water is shown, but never pointed out. Like right here. Or over there. There's a lake in here. In some places, the water is everywhere. In the 4 examples I just shown, you can see the correlation between water and food very quickly. Rivers, crops. Wells, gardens. Lake, fishing ships. Water, rice paddies. Simple. So why isn't this stated more often? Why isn't the water pointed out? Well, it's because of the fact that, logically, every place should have a water source. People need to drink. People need things to grow. The settlements are alive because there's water to provide food. It's all interconnected. It's a part of world building that just exists as a default. It's kind of hard to find examples that don't do this, due to the fact that worlds that don't address this tend to be missing a few other links, and thus fall apart very quickly. But one example I do see every now and then is Fallout 3 by Bethesda. Fallout 3 has barely any crops in its nuclear wasteland, yet there are settlements that exist. These settlements are usually built around things that shouldn't support life, like an atom bomb, or a ship carrier in irradiated water. Now, it's implied that many people are surviving off of scavenged goods from around the wasteland, but that's not really a sustainable way to live. There are no reliable sources of water in many of these locations, so they should have trouble making food. And since there aren't many crops, it makes you wonder how they aren't starving constantly. From a world building perspective, it fails off of the fact that these people shouldn't be able to survive off scavenge for 100 years, especially with food that's irradiated. Now, despite all my ranting about how important water is, this concept's only really important if you want to ground your world. Depending on the world you're trying to make, you might not actually care about where the people are getting their water from. I'm not exactly going to wonder how these creatures came into existence when their apparent water source is dragon saliva. If you're not going for realism, then that's fine. But if your story is grounded in reality in some way, then water acts as the foundation to your world. Likewise, this isn't a specific concept meant only for medieval worlds. If you're in a sci-fi setting, water is even more important, because the world that exists might not have water, but the humans that want to be there need it. With a biologically different race, the water and everything I've used it for can be replaced with whatever made up or real resource you want, so long as it sustains and grows your race. If you want to make an alien race that can survive off rocks, then great. But then you'll have to go into what nutrients do they get from those rocks, and how it formed their civilization. So, in summary, a simple but important part of your world should be to have water somewhere. If you want to establish that the village is flourishing, having a river or pond next to many crops sells the idea that it's doing well. And even if there's no noticeable river anywhere, just having water appear somewhere gives the idea that they are a surviving settlement. It can be as simple as adding a well, but it adds to the world and just makes sense. If you have a land shape in mind, try to figure out where you could place rivers and lakes, cause that will influence where the civilizations will form. That's all I have on the topic for now. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.